I, a 20-year-old woman, was raised by my father, a 49-year-old man, alongside my older brothers, Lyle and Kyle, both 23 years old and twins. Our mother left shortly after I was born, so I never had a maternal figure while growing up. I tried to ask my dad why she left, but he always dodged the question. This left me with lingering feelings of self-blame. To make matters worse, my older brothers often used the old "you're why mom left" card during arguments in my middle school years. My mother began to call me and my brothers during that time, claiming that she wanted me back in her life. However, she made no effort to get to know us, and she broke many promises. The final straw for me was when she didn't come to a beauty pageant I had been excited about for months. It may sound petty, but it meant a lot to me at the time. She had sworn she would come, but of course, she broke that promise too. After I let her have it during a lengthy phone call, I decided to go no contact with her. A few days ago, my dad texted me asking if I wanted to have dinner with him and my brothers. He said he was going to make my favorite meal, and I agreed. However, when I arrived, I heard a woman's laughter coming from the kitchen. I walked in and found my dad, Lyle, and Kyle laughing and talking with my mother. I couldn't hide my anger and confusion, and I must have voiced my thoughts because I asked, "What is she doing here?" Everyone fell silent, and my dad eventually told me to watch my tone. They claimed they only wanted to talk about their future. My mother dropped the bombshell that she and my dad had rekindled their relationship and had been dating for months. You can probably imagine how shocked and upset I was by this revelation. Lyle then revealed that everyone in the immediate family knew about their relationship except for me because they were concerned about my reaction. I was still standing there, seething with rage, and when my dad tried to grab my arm to sit me down for a talk, I pulled away and stormed out of the house. Since then, my dad and Lyle have bombarded me with texts, calling me immature and saying that I made my mom cry. My friends are divided on the matter, and I'm left wondering if I'm the one at fault here. To start, I want to make it clear that I don't believe I'm in the wrong in this situation. They essentially ambushed me at the dinner table, and I couldn't be expected to accept her and act like everything was fine. The past has haunted me for a long time, and my reaction is completely understandable. I can't blame you for walking out on them. Your father, as an adult, is free to choose his romantic partner, but he should also understand that there will be consequences to such a decision, especially considering your feelings toward your mother. He must have had an inkling about your reaction. So for him to set up a situation like this without any consideration for your feelings is quite perplexing. You might never forgive your mother for her actions, but if they were going to go through with this, there had to be a more considerate way to handle it. Many people agree that you are not in the wrong for how you feel. Your family blindsided you and then blamed you for your natural and emotional reaction. If you choose to distance yourself from your mother, you shouldn't be forced to accept your father's decisions blindly, OP asserted. I understand he's an adult, but I can't fathom what he sees in her. She left him to raise 3 kids alone, and now that we're all grown up, she wants to come back. This whole situation has me feeling incredibly mixed up and emotional. Bonnie chimed in, offering her perspective. Focus on what you want. Do you trust your father and brothers enough to continue a relationship? Opie sighed, struggling to find the right words. Trust isn't the word I'd use, but I do love them deeply. They've never done anything as hurtful as this, except for Lyle, but his teasing about my fashion sense pales in comparison. It would have been better if my dad had talked to me alone. The fact that they all kept it from me feels incredibly inconsiderate. I've been in situations where I was left out or the last to know, and it's tough, Confused sympathetically said. Opie appreciated the support, thank you. I just feel so upset and confused with my dad right now. They've never kept anything like this from me before. Usually, my dad addresses matters with all of us together. In response to Opie's turmoil, Nopi offered reassurance. You're completely justified in going no contact with your family over this. They ambushed you and made you deal with it. You endured years of heartbreak, broken promises, and torment from your mother and some family members. Opie felt the need to clarify. I want to clear the air about my brothers. They didn't constantly torment me about our mother. It mostly happened during big fights when they would drop the "this is why mom left" card. It's not right, of course, but I can somewhat understand where they were coming from. They had a more established relationship with her. Tori Beth firmly added, you're not at fault here. You were blindsided because nobody said anything knowing you would be angry. They were trying to soften your reaction with a done deal. Make it clear to everyone, especially your dad and brothers, that while you can't dictate their choices, they can't dictate yours either. If they choose to let her back in and possibly get hurt again, That's their decision. Your trust has been broken far too many times, and you're not willing to do the same. Tell them that while you love them, they shouldn't pressure you into anything. You have every right to cut them off and any flying monkeys they send your way. Let them know that in family gatherings, dinners, holidays, or reunions, you'll be civil, but you won't acknowledge her as a stepmom or mom. She has no right to try and parent you. Before I get into anything, I just wanted to express my gratitude for all the kind words and reassurance. I wasn't really expecting such a supportive response. I'd also like to apologize for the delay in my response. I've been busy with work and other things that have kept me occupied. With your advice in mind, I reached out to my dad and told him that I needed answers about what was going on. He agreed, but he suggested having dinner at his place. I had to firmly remind him that he lost my trust when he tried to back me into a corner. He eventually came over to my apartment. A friend of mine, a 24-year-old male, was staying in my sewing room for support. My dad started sobbing and begged for forgiveness, expressing how he just wanted us to be the family we were 20 years ago, a family I can't even remember. These were crocodile tears, so I hugged him to calm him down, but also insisted on getting answers, not tears. He composed himself and proceeded to explain everything I had asked. First, my mom was very young when she got together with my dad, with a significant age gap. They started dating right after high school graduation. Second, my mother had a history of drug addiction, something I had suspected. She even overdosed once, and my dad had to rush her to the hospital. The twins suffered during this period. Third, I was an unplanned pregnancy. My parents decided to put my mother in rehab during her pregnancy, but she remained miserable and ran away to Florida after my birth. Recently, my mom got clean, found a job, and wanted to apologize to my dad. They rekindled their relationship and decided to inform the twins first before telling me. It was helpful to have this information, and I thanked him for sharing it. But I also questioned why she hadn't apologized to the twins, whose hearts she had broken consistently. My dad started to backpedal, suggesting that I should give her a chance to prove herself, especially since the twins already had. He also admitted that it was a really bad move not to mention to me that mom was back. I explained to him that I had given her too many chances, and she had irreparably damaged our relationship. However, I clarified that I wasn't going to cut them off entirely, but mom would be treated as a new person. I insisted that we needed therapy without mom before continuing anything. My dad was a bit upset when I conveyed this to him, but he agreed to the therapy and said he would inform Lyle and Kyle. When he told the twins, Kyle was on board, but Lyle was furious. He called multiple times and sent hurtful texts, essentially boiling it down to me being a spoiled brat who needed to get over the past. I responded firmly before blocking him, and we've been in no contact since. We also had our first therapy session, which wasn't groundbreaking but more of an introductory session. We discussed what we want to work on. I even showed our therapist this post. I found myself alone with her, needing to provide more context because I can be a bit scattered at times. She expressed her desire to delve deeper into my feelings about my mother, alongside my father and brothers if possible. I'll attempt to provide further updates whenever I can. I am profoundly sorry for what you're experiencing right now. Your mother's sudden return into your life, with your father welcoming her back, must be incredibly heartbreaking. The feelings involved in this situation must be overwhelming. On top of that, for your family to turn their back on you and label you as a spoiled brat must be deeply hurtful. I genuinely hope that therapy continues to help you, providing you with the support and understanding you need. Now, I'd like to turn the conversation over to you guys. What are your thoughts on this situation? Please share your insights in the comments below. Let's now move on to another story. This next one comes from a new user, 9461, and it comes with an update. The question is, am I the ATA for telling my uncle to stop gifting my daughter extravagant trips? A bit of backstory. When my sister and I were kids, every year for our birthdays and Christmas, my uncle would give us cards. Inside those cards were printed out pictures of various places like local theme parks, zoos, aquariums, and museums. Basically, any place a kid would love to visit. After we opened the cards, he would enthusiastically tell us that we were going to that place. He would make grand promises like, "It's going to be the best trip of your life." However, the catch was, we never actually went on any of those trips. Initially, it was disappointing, but eventually, I started expecting it and just went along with it. I harbor no animosity towards him because, as an adult, I understand he did this due to financial constraints. Here's where my issue begins. My daughter recently turned 5, and for her birthday, my uncle gave her a card. Inside was a printed out picture of a theme park located about 2 hours away from our house. He promised her a fun weekend away, with elaborate details such as a huge hotel room with a swimming pool, endless snacks, and tickets to every show she wanted to see at the park. Naturally, my daughter was overjoyed. For the past week, she has been talking non-stop about this trip, expressing her excitement to her entire class at school. It breaks my heart to see that smile on her face, knowing deep down that it's not going to happen. I recall how disappointing it was for me, and I didn't want my daughter to go through the same. So I decided to text my uncle. Here's what the message said. "Hi, your message in daughter's names card was beautiful. However, could you please leave out the promise of extravagant trips next time? The thought and gesture are amazing, but I find it hard to explain when she asks me about the trip. She loves spending time with you, and even a nice lunch together would make her happy." He never responded, but my aunt told me he was upset. She mentioned something about him feeling offended, thinking I implied he could only afford a nice lunch. I didn't mean it that way at all. I just wanted him to understand that my daughter loves him and wants to spend time together without needing extravagant promises. I can see why he interpreted it that way, and now I'm questioning if I'm in the wrong. This has been an unspoken thing in my family for so long, and I wonder if I should have just left it that way. But I can't bear the thought of my little girl being disappointed so many times. My sisters and my mom agree with me. My mom even regrets not stopping it when we were kids. So am I wrong for telling my uncle to stop gifting my daughter extravagant trips? Absolutely not. This is the first time he's done it because she's only 5 years old. Looking back, I realize it might have been wise to immediately clarify to her that this is something uncle does and then put a stop to it with him right away. Stories like this are heartbreaking for kids. The idea of her getting excited, telling all her friends about it, and then finding out it's all false is incredibly cruel. Poet Revolutionary rightly points out, not the AITA, but why are you being sensitive to his feelings when he wasn't sensitive to yours when you were a child? Tell him that his actions cause you repeated disappointment and you don't want your child to experience the same. Surprises are not presents. A lunch or an activity on the day would be lovely, but other than that, stick to an actual gift or give nothing at all. Disastrous Nail agrees, saying, not the AITA. Stop being nice because he's not being nice. He knowingly gets a child's hopes up and then crushes them. There isn't one nice thing about what he's doing. Tell him he's no longer allowed to give gifts because he's a known liar, and all attempts will be intercepted by you. Pandora chimes in, saying, not the AITA, your uncle is being cruel to another generation. She said, I understand that you might feel offended by what I said, but you are being cruel to my daughter by promising a trip that will never materialize. You did the same thing to me and my sisters when we were children, so I know firsthand how much it hurts to have these grand promises made but never fulfilled. I will not allow you to hurt my daughter in the same way. Whether it's due to a lack of time, finances, or another reason, it is unacceptable to make a child feel this way. You know my daughter loves spending time with you. She would have been so happy with a trip to the local park and some ice cream. Now I have to deal with a little girl's broken heart, just like mine was so many times. Please think about the consequences of your actions. Just because you don't witness them doesn't mean they don't happen. Brain surgery woman commented, not the AITA, and I would definitely protect your daughter because that's exactly what you are doing. The disappointment for everyone when it doesn't happen is so harsh for a child. It's not a life lesson she needs to learn. Too bad he's upset about your implication. Your daughter comes first. He's making empty promises and setting her up to not believe or trust when someone gives her something exciting. You already went through that and know how it feels. She doesn't deserve that. Amber All Day pointed out, you're the AITA for not telling your daughter the truth. I find it unbelievable that you let her be so excited for an entire week, to the point of telling her school friends about her promised treat, and at no point you could have said, sorry, sweetheart, uncle was only telling a story. He won't be taking you on a trip. He did this to me my whole childhood. It's just a lovely dream, but it won't ever be a real trip. Why did you say that to her the same day that he told her about this fake present? When she is eventually disappointed, that will be completely on you as a parent. You should know better and should do better. 3Baller added, you're the AITA because you enabled lies to be a birthday gift. I'm sorry you were raised being given these lies, but it needs to stop. It's a bad idea that only persists around in your family because a cheap man made a tradition to allow himself to be cheap and unthoughtful every year. I wish I had a tradition that made me a good person for not spending money, but at least I don't lie to children. And knick-knack or candy would have been more thoughtful and also as cheap as a false promise, and it wouldn't make you resent your relatives. Please end your family tradition. In an update, the original poster acknowledged the feedback, stating, "Thanks to everyone for your feedback on my last post. A lot of people asked why I was being so nice to my uncle, and honestly, I think I underestimated how weird it was because it's been so normalized in my family. I didn't want to cause drama, so I went about it as non-confrontational as possible. I agree now that I should have been more direct. Another concern many of you had was that I allowed this to happen to my daughter previously. That is not true. This is the first time he promised her one of his trips, which is why I decided to say something so this doesn't become a recurring thing. Here's the update. I tried to call my uncle twice, but he didn't answer. I managed to get through to my aunt and explained everything to her, how many times he did this to my siblings and me, and how often we were disappointed. I told her how excited my daughter was, and if they were actually planning to take her on this trip, I would apologize. She didn't take that well, she told me. I told them that I felt they were creating unnecessary drama and that my daughter and I weren't acting entitled to expect them to drop everything for the trip. I was shocked and angry and said, "How dare you say that she didn't imagine this trip in her mind and expect you to take her? You promised her this trip, and her disappointment is not entitlement. It's not my job to make sure a grown man feels secure in himself. And it's a shame my family spent so long coddling him." I was so mad that I just hung up. I no longer feel any ounce of guilt for setting my boundaries. Many people asked if I could take my daughter on the trip. Unfortunately, that theme park closes for the season this month. However, I surprised her with something even better. After the phone call with my aunt, my partner and I decided to book a trip to Disneyland. It may sound crazy and impulsive, but we've been wanting to plan this for a while, and we decided it's the perfect time. My kid is entitled to an extravagant trip. Last year, we sat her down and explained that her uncle wouldn't be able to take her on the promised trip. I tried to be as honest as possible without confusing her. She was understandably upset and had a lot of questions. After we answered them all, I told her not to worry because her mom and dad are taking us somewhere instead. When she found out it was Disneyland, she was over the moon. She spent all day deciding which Minnie Mouse stuffed animal she wants to take with her. I told her to tell her classmates that her trip got upgraded. All things considered, it's a happy ending. I know I won't always be able to protect her from disappointment, but I sure as hell will do my best. She's getting that giant hotel room she was promised.